Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am your friendly neighborhood Pokeprof, and welcome back to Posies vs. Putrids. When we last left off, we had gotten ready to fight an entire massive wave of zombies, and that's what we're gonna do. Now, this is basically gonna be another little bit of a mini game run, to where, kind of like what we had to deal with when it came with the walnut bowling, we basically get a selection of plants and we get to put them anywhere we want. Pretty much you're going to want to put as many plants down as fast as you can. Usually what I like to do is I like to save my repeaters for going as a long line in the back, and then put pea shooters in places when I can't spare them. Cherry bombs for when things get busy, and walnuts if you really need them. But overall, this is actually probably one of the easier versions of this particular minigame. We're going to get a much more difficult one later on in the game. And of course, the snow pea here is to help us out a lot. Put down there. Just to be a bit of a dick, let's go ahead and start playing these guys. Now, by actually going and putting the walnuts here, not only am I making these guys have to sit here and just eat a lot of damage from my repeaters, but this will also essentially just like build up a huge wall of zombies, which in some cases it can be really useful. Say if you're wanting to blow them all up with a cherry bomb. In other cases it can actually lead to your death, because then you're having to destroy a lot more than you would normally have to. Alright, let's go here. I think at this point we're pretty much good. Between the snow peas and the repeaters, we shouldn't have to worry too much about having to deal with any of them. And if any of them do get too far, we've got a couple of potato mines here ready to blow them up. Let's go ahead and replace you with it there. This particular minigame, more often than not, ends up with you having a butt ton of just extra plants that you can place anywhere. So it really doesn't matter as much with some of the other stuff. Now, actually, I'm going to put this guy here, because hopefully this will actually show off something that I was wanting to show off in the last round. Put you there. You here. See if the enemies are actually going to be able to do it. If we can get anyone close enough. Because if my memory serves me correctly... Oh, you're not even going to get close enough. That sucks. Let's put another guy here. Destroy you. Come on, you should be able to take it. Come on, get close, get close, get close. There we go, that's what I thought. You can actually have the chomper go and protect things in front of it. It will actually go and eat anything that's at least one square ahead of it. Not the most terrible, useful thing in the world, but useful enough to where you can actually be able to get an advantage if you need it. Let's go ahead and actually remove you and replace you. As you can see, we're just kind of murdering everything that comes through, so I'm just going to start spamming cherry bombs to speed this up a bit. At this point, there's no point not to use them, because the more I destroy them, the faster the other zombies are going to come. And it's like, with so many walnuts, there's actually not much left I can do. I filled up almost the entire map. And this is actually something that can and will happen to you quite often in this game, is once you get to a certain point, you will fill up the entire map just overpowering all the other zombies. In fact, it's like, yeah, most zombies can't even make it close enough to be any threat whatsoever. Alright, we should go into our next wave. Yep, huge wave. Not that it matters, they'll be dead the moment they pop in. Go you here, we'll start replacing some of my old features with computers. Just watch my entire plant army destroy everything. Alright, you should be the last ones. But with that, we finally get a new plant after that huge wave and a bit of a time shift. For you see, it is no longer daytime, it is now nighttime. And kind of like Dead Rising, we're gonna have to deal with much stronger zombies now at night. Yeah, but Dave brings up an interesting point here. Because it's nighttime, we won't get sun falling from the sky, so sun in general is going to be a little bit more of a conservative resource. We will still go ahead and get sun from sunflowers though, so it's not all bad. Ayo, good! But as he mentioned, we now have the Puff-Shroom, which is a brand new plant I will be getting into in just a moment. But the main thing I want to show off here is the newspaper zombie. I'll go a little bit more in detail on him once we actually see him. But we'll go ahead and pull in the Puff-Shroom, the repeater, chomper, potato mine, you, and we're good. Oh, and then we also get introduced to the gravestones. The gravestones are going to be a little bit annoying, but you'll see that in a little bit. Now, the first major thing we gotta know about Puff-Shrooms is that you might think, oh, it's a zero sun plant where I can spam these everywhere and be perfectly fine. Well, you can't, not really. Because here, I put this guy in my normal spot for my pea shooters, and you notice he's not actually attacking. That's because even though the Puff-Shrooms are free cost, they actually have limited range. Yeah, as you see, it requires a zombie to be at least 3 squares away before it actually starts attacking. It makes this plant more useful in the nighttime stages where you really desperately need some form of protection. But in terms of an actual, fighting plant, it's probably one of the weaker ones around. I personally consider this plant more to be useful if you are a new player and you don't know really how to conserve your sun well. With that, we're probably not going to be using him too much if, I'm at the moment just trying to build up my sunflower so I can have some sun. Usually what I do is I really just heavily rely on my potato mines, have them take care of any zombie coming my way, and then go for the repeaters once I got a good row of sunflowers built up. But at a moment, we should actually be seeing our first newspaper zombie. There he is. Newspaper zombies are a little bit more dangerous than regular zombies, and you'll see why once he actually gets a little bit closer. First off, the major thing that will actually be a difference between him and normal zombies is he actually has a shield, his newspaper. That will take hits for him until he gets close enough. Once it's destroyed though, he gets enraged and he'll actually go and attack you for more damage. This is also the level where we start actually getting money from not just zombies, but the lawnmowers here. For every lawnmower you have up at the end of the level, you'll actually get more and more cash. Cash isn't going to be useful for this at the exact moment, but it will be further on. So let's see. But yeah, the newspaper zombies aren't really too terrifying if you really are prepared for them, but they can surprise you if you're not paying attention. The major thing you just got to keep in mind is that they will enrage if you let them. Let's see. Alright, we're starting to get a little bit more zombies here. We don't really need to worry too much about the shrooms anymore. We got all of our sunflowers set up, so we're pretty good from this point onward. Alright, just one more, and we'll put our repeater here. Now, I believe these guys' damage is actually equal to that of the pea shooters. The main difference really is just that they're so weak overall. Weak and short range means, you know, you're not going to be too terribly useful in the end game. But then again, it's like that you can't, especially in a game like this, you can't just go say, hey, here's all the best plants in the game. You have to have tiers of plants. Some are good in certain situations. And these guys are just good if you're needing to not spend sun. But this is also where the tombstones start coming in. Because once the huge wave starts, that's when the zombies are summoned from the tombstones. And unfortunately, at the moment, we actually can't do anything about the tombstones, so we just gotta deal with them. Thankfully, though, they don't do too much for us at this early stage of the game. We should be finished up right about here. There we go. Get about 100 gold or $100 for every lawnmower that we keep. Not too bad. And now Crazy Dave basically tells us how much money we've collected, and that he'll sell us something neato once we reached $750. We will usually reach that about the second or third stage in the nighttime areas. But from the last time we got the Sun-Shroom, which I'll be showing off instead of the sunflower, because essentially what the Sun-Shroom is, it's a cheaper variety of the sunflower. The Sun-Shroom, well, you'll see it actually when we go into the game. So I'm actually, you know what? Yeah, let's keep the Puff-Shroom. Might as well use the mushrooms in the nighttime levels. And Cherry Bomb just to round us off. Now the major thing about the Sun-Shrooms is they are pretty much basically sunflowers, but weaker when they start off. Instead of giving you 25 sun when you collect them, they'll only give you 15 sun. So you're getting weaker sun off the bat. So, but the reason you would use them is, again, to conserve your sun. Because these guys will eventually grow up into be bigger mushrooms, and when they do, it usually takes about a minute or so, minute and a half, I want to say. They will go and produce regular sun for you. They'll produce the regular 25. So it's a matter of having weaker sun to start out with, but not having to spend as much sun to plant them versus the regular sunflowers. I usually just tend to go with the sunflowers myself because, you know, with the way I play and planting back 2 rows being full of sunflowers, I'm usually not having to worry too much about, you know, conserving my sun. That said, you know, especially in these nighttime levels where you have limited sun resources, it can be a bit of a headache to try and have, like, you know, do what I've been doing, sunflower and then repeaters. As you saw from that last level, I was only able to get 1 row of repeaters before I finished everything up. Versus the, 2 or 3 things of repeaters I had in previous levels. So it's a matter of, you know, when and where you gotta do all your sun. You also may have noticed that the levels are starting to get a little bit longer. not only are we having to start off with weaker items and abilities from the earlier points, but we're just having to deal with the simple fact that, well, the waves are getting longer and there's going to be more zombies that we have to deal with. I'm not going to be able to go through an entire half of an area as easily as I once was. It's simply not going to be reasonable. Alright, let's go ahead and kill you so we can go and put a repeater down. You should be easily killed off. There we go. I'm actually a little surprised. I thought we would have been by the first wave at that point. As you can see, now we have 4 of our mushrooms that have grown big, and the rest of them will continue to grow as we go throughout this particular level. Honestly, I'm not sure what would honestly be considered better. It's like, if you feel like you can be perfectly fine with just putting down sunflowers versus having weaker sun to start out with the Sun-Shrooms, it really is a matter of preference. I usually tend to go with sunflowers, but as you can see here, I've actually been able to do my sun a little bit easier than I was in the previous level. So, you know, do what feels best for you. There we go. Now we have all repeaters. We should be hitting our first big wave in a moment. There we go. He's dead. Now here's something interesting that you might notice. Notice we had a huge wave of zombies, and yet these guys didn't spawn. The tombstone zombies will usually only spawn when there is a final wave, essentially. So you are getting... Well, actually... Let's hang on. Yeah, you're getting too close. Also, one thing I've actually forgot to mention from the very beginning of the game that I wasn't paying attention about. You can actually lose sun from your zombies. You want to make sure that you collect them as soon as possible, or otherwise you're not going to be able to get the sun. You gotta keep you active, because otherwise, like with any tower defense, once you get to a certain point, you're kind of, you know, not having to rely on them anymore. You're just sitting there and watching the power of your turrets just destroy whatever comes through. That's another spit down. You should die. There we go. Get another repeater. So yeah, partly by virtue of the fact that I was able to have more sun thanks to these guys, but partly also by the fact that this is a longer level, I was able to summon a much more repeaters than last time, which I needed with some of these bucket zombies. I'm certain that things would be even easier for me if I had the snow peas, but as I said, the snow peas are kind of OP. I don't want to be overusing them. Ooh, hey, giant coin. I normally don't see that drop off of zombies, unless it's a very strong zombie, which, unfortunately, the newspaper zombies aren't really that powerful. You know, their main danger is if they get close enough to chomp on your head before you're able to kill them. Let's see, more money. Huge wave. And these guys should be more than capable of taking it all out. There's the new group. Now this is actually something I also wanted to show off here as well. As you may have noticed, we actually had a couple of conehead zombies pop up from the tombstones. And that's essentially to signify to players is that, yes, you will fight zombies of different varieties from this ground area. They will come in all varieties from the tombstones. The only things you won't see will be zombies with like certain huge items, which we'll get to in a little bit. With that said, we actually now have the Puff-Shroom, but I think we'll talk about it next time. Until then, folks, take care.